And so the last thing we're going to be looking at here, guys, is the Electoral College. Now, if we go to onpointpolitics.com, this is where it gets very fascinating. What's very fascinating about my election model, we basically track the demographics using 538. We kind of track the demographic margins with very accurate national pollsters. We average them out. I do have my own polling averages, which I readjust by party, and put in my own personal prediction for states that have not had any sort of polling data or average that I have constructed. Then I also include something where we track the trend between 2000 and 2020 in terms of how the state votes relative to the nation. You find that number for 2024, an estimate, and then you apply that to the next election, basically applying the trend from 2000 to 2020 in every state to the 2020 numbers. And then you apply the national popular vote average, and then that's kind of the third margin. And so when you do that, Donald Trump does have a 69% chance to Harris's 29% to win the election. Donald Trump's coming out the gate with 297 electoral college votes, so he's effectively winning Nevada, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia, and Arizona, and holding the rest of his 2020 states. Should have included North Carolina in that. But he is winning through Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Nevada, where he has above a 60% chance in all of those states to win them. So that is why they are now in the lean Republican column. All of these states here, you can see Harris essentially has above a 60% chance or more to win all of the states that are in her column, or at least above 70 probably. All of the states that are toss-ups are below a 60% chance for either candidate to win, because 40 to 60% odds in a state is pretty good for either party. And so that's where we kind of did the cutoff. And so the toss-ups are New Mexico, Minnesota, Michigan, Virginia, Maine, Nebraska, and New Hampshire. And looking at our average, Donald Trump is at 48.7%, actually 48.8 if you round it out. And then Harris is at 45.3%. So she has gone down a little bit. And so now looking here, this is the new thing we added. We added a histogram looking at all the simulations we've done for the model up here. And when you look at the simulations, it's pretty interesting, because on the lower end of the results that have 8 or more simulations, we can see that the lower end of that is 194. And for Donald Trump, the low end of that is going to be 251 electoral college votes. So in a situation where 8 or more simulations out of the 1,000 end up here, which are going to constitute over a majority of the simulations, Harris's floor is 194 to Trump's 251. So going based off of that, you have a pretty good electoral college map for Trump. And I'm going to actually pull this up really quick here so you guys can see. This will be the last thing we look at. This is kind of the electoral college map, because if she's at about 191, I mean, if I combined, I could put New Hampshire, or I could put Maine or Nebraska second. But if her floor for all the simulations above 8 is really, really that low, it's probably closer to this, making all of those toss-ups. So effectively, Georgia and North Carolina are essentially in Donald Trump's column at this point. A lot of the West Coast states, Colorado, Hawaii, Illinois, and most of the Northeast is pretty much in Kamala Harris's column. If you guys would like to bet on the presidential election and see where the latest odds are, make sure to go ahead and look at betonline.com, where you can bet which state is going to go to either candidate and basically look at the odds. So for example, Florida, the Democrats, if you bet $100 on them, you get about 600 back, which is pretty insane. And looking at Illinois, same thing. If you bet on Republicans $100, you'd make about $2,500. You can also vote on the Electoral College, whether or not, what amount of votes each candidate will get in the Electoral College. You can actually bet on the presidential debate as well, Donald Trump being the underdog. I may actually bet on that, but we will see. Looking at referenda, you can also bet on certain, referendums that have to pass or not. You can also bet on the winning party. You can also bet on world leaders as well,
who's going to leave and when Vladimir Putin is even going to leave and everything. You can also bet on the House of Representatives. So if you guys want to see all of these, make sure to go ahead and hit the like button and make sure to subscribe and go to the description down below to check out the latest betting odds.
And Donald Trump really has an easy victory to the White House. I mean, he could win with just Pennsylvania out of all these states where, again, like Connor K mentioned, the registrations for them look good. They're outperforming the Republicans in the 2022 midterms and mail-in ballot request by literally 85%. That's a huge difference. And even outperforming slightly from 2020, or maybe underperforming by like 5. But compared to 2020, the Democrats are doing far worse. And so that isn't really great either. And looking at, for example, Arizona. I mean, Nevada and Arizona, guys, these states have heavy Hispanic populations. The former president is doing a lot better with them. And if he's winning 45% of Hispanics nationwide, I can't see him losing Nevada or Arizona, really. And that puts him at 268. I mean, at that point, maybe New Mexico is in the lean column. Maybe Minnesota is still blue. But that still kind of puts some states up for grabs. It really does put some states still up because, I mean, the Rust Belt, if Donald Trump's doing good enough with whites, could carry over. Like, there's so many paths for him to win. Michigan could get him over. You could do a combination of Virginia and Nevada. You could do a combination of, let's go ahead and fix this really quick. I don't know why this got so out of hand. Minnesota, Wisconsin can get you there. You can get there through a combination of Michigan and Nevada. You could get there through a combination of Wisconsin, Maine at large, New Hampshire, as well as Nebraska, and then one more state. You could even get there through New Mexico and Arizona and Nevada. Like, there are a lot of paths for Donald Trump to win the presidency. There are quite a bit of paths. And for Harris, there really isn't that many because she's got to win New Mexico. She's got to win Minnesota, Virginia, New Hampshire, Maine at large, Nebraska second. She's got to win all of those, and she's still at 226. At that point, she could either sweep the Rust Belt, which is about 270, and if she's really winning the Rust Belt, that means she's outperforming with white voters, but probably doesn't translate over to Hispanics. And so that puts Donald Trump at 268. So she's really got the same one viable electoral path to the White House that Joe Biden had, which was through the Rust Belt. And Donald Trump, in the latest Rich Barris national poll in the crosstabs, has Donald Trump up 6 in the Midwest, and he won it by 4 in 2016. So he's outperforming there. Now, maybe Iowa and Ohio are kind of influencing that margin. Maybe it's still competitive, but the fact that Donald Trump is outperforming Richard Barris's polling data in the Midwest compared to 2016 and 2020 by quite a bit, there is a humongous shift for Donald Trump in the Rust Belt. There is a humongous difference. Even if you're comparing it from 2020, going from Biden +2 to Trump +6 is sort of a big difference because even then, Iowa and Ohio were still 8-point victories. And so that is very interesting. The one state that I do think is sort of a dark horse is Virginia, because you do have Glenn Youngkin, who got elected in 2021. He just signed an executive order saying paper ballots only for the election. And on top of that, he also gave his endorsement to Donald Trump. The polling has been sort of close there compared to 2020. And so it kind of leads me to believe that there may be a little bit of a problem in a state like Virginia. Generally may be a problem for the Democrats. We'll see what election day is. My national average for Virginia has it basically within a point, which is very interesting. And so really she's got one viable path to the Electoral College, that being 270 right on the dot through the Rust Belt, and she's got to win all 3 of them. And she doesn't particularly have a strong hold. Even Mark Halpern from Two-Way has Democrat sources in the state saying they're not confident in her chances there. And so she's not winning Pennsylvania. She's not winning the election because it's quite funny, but they actually ranked what I think Two-Way ranked what states they think are easiest to go to Trump. And right after North Carolina being the first one, it's Pennsylvania. And Mark Halpern is from like the more corporate Democrat aligned side of the spectrum a bit. And so I think it is pretty nuts that that is the case, that they have Pennsylvania just as easy of a flip as North Carolina. Like, that's pretty astonishing because North Carolina went to Donald Trump even in 2020 by a point and went to him by 4 in 2016.